Hey, we're live, and I'm having trouble getting the camera to look. I don't know whether the problem is not enough light. I had the camera, I moved my screen, and I lost the camera. So whether it'll come back on or not, I do not know. But we'll go forward with or without picture and see what happens. It's just, there we go. All right. So I got a surprise for you guys. As soon as I get a couple people on here, I'll show you my surprise. If you notice my eyes are a little swollen today, that's because I turned the light off in the room before my screen on my telephone went off. And so I had some gnats in here, and one of them went into my eye, and that was a whole lot of fun. So I woke up with a swollen eye this morning. I'm really allergic to these silly little gnats. Welcome, Arif. Glad to have you back. I'm not sure. Let Lisa debate. Which Lisa are you talking about that you want to see a debate with? I was reading Ezekiel 33 yesterday. I did call the company, found out what was going on, why I didn't have internet connection or lost it. I had it, and it was so intermittent all day yesterday and all morning. And yeah, we finally got it fixed. So, hopefully it'll stay on. So I was reading Ezekiel 33 yesterday, talking about how important it is to warn other people about what's going on. We need to be using our voices, because if we know something's happening and we don't let other people know, God's going to hold us to account for that. So Ezekiel 33. And I sure hope this computer is not going to shut down because it wants to do an update. So hopefully, if I lose you, that's why. And we'll come back Monday. I need to get some help with the computer over the weekend. Anyhow, Ezekiel 33, see if I can figure out which verse this is. 11. The Lord says, I take no pleasure in the death of the wicked, but rather that they turn from their ways and live. Turn from your evil ways. That was the last verse I didn't get to read yesterday. We've had much discussion. People have called Larry and talked to him in person, telling him he needed to forgive the people who had hurt him, especially the Clintons. His real big mission in life was to make sure that they paid for what they had been involved in. And he realizes, because of their security clearance and how high up they were in the government, chances are that they won't see jail time. Now, we all know that the punishment for treason is it used to be hanging. They're supposed to be killed for what they did. But of course, the judicial system takes a while to work through all the courts, and until you've had, every opportunity to have it overturned. And so they can't be in jail. It would not be safe for our country to allow them to have access to criminals and share their story. So, whether we will see the top people who really do need to be punished severely for what they did, we may not see that. So now that we have 11 people here, here's my little surprise, folks. See my braids? They're gone. I just cut them off. So a lot shorter than it was. Not completely short, but very uneven. I took my braids and just whacked them. And that's that. I'm going to go vote as soon as we're done here. I just got my voter's registration card before I took my little trip and had the hardest time finding it. I thought I had left it at home, but I apparently had taken it with me, and it was buried among a whole bunch of other paperwork. I am hoping this afternoon to go through why did I cut it? I got tired of sitting on it. It wasn't comfortable to sit down, and I'd be sitting on my hair and pulling it. It just was anyhow, it'll grow back. I have 2 braids here that I can send to Locks of Love or some other organization and donate it. So that's something that my daughter and I tend to do. We'll grow it out. And I took a good 15 inches off and still have it down to my shoulders or past my shoulders. So as you can see, you can't even see the ends of it when I've got to be behind. So, it's just I'll grow it out again. And as long as they'll take it, I will give it. Yes, it's a lot easier. Don't need an extra towel. I kind of decided I was young enough that I didn't need to continue looking like my grandmother. I looked a lot like her with that braid. So, thanks, Patricia. Yeah. So this was about 3 years worth of growth. So, voting. So I'm going to vote today, and I have until 6:00. The polls close. The poll I'm supposed to vote at is the only one in town. The church around the corner from me was the only one in town that stayed closed today. So I have to go to another polling place, but they said that wasn't going to be a problem. So I never got a voter's guide for who's who in this going to be on the ballot. I haven't seen a sample ballot. So I'm a little concerned because there have only been 2 people who have aggressively put out flyers on a regular basis in my mailbox and on my door asking me to vote for them. And I think they're both Democrats. So that's the end of that idea. So I will take their information with me and vote for the opposite. Yes, Patricia, of course I am. As hard as Larry and I have worked to try and get him elected for the last 4+ years, we're definitely going to be voting red all the way. It's really important, if you haven't voted yet, make sure you do. And if there's a way to vote today, I just don't know what to expect. If you're going to vote Tuesday, go as early in the day as possible. As they start revealing information, the plan is to really wreak havoc around the country and to be very, very dangerous. Steve Quayle last night I think it was last night with Doug Hagman. Man, what he had to say just sounded like fear porn like crazy. Not that they were trying to be fear porn, but, with what they've heard. So be very, very cautious. I will tell you what Larry told me 3.5 years ago when I came here to meet him, when we got together to autograph the book. As soon as I got out of the car, he told me, now listen, Mary Ellen, don't you dare go near your car or go in your car without looking underneath. Make sure nobody set a bomb under there. And I kind of giggled and I said, you're kidding, right? He says, no. I mean, he had a stern face. No, I'm deadly serious. Because I'd been to his house, and so it was very dangerous, and he was very concerned. And he wanted to make sure that I was safe. And he said when I went to the hotel not to park out front and be real obvious about it. So, I always had to be very careful. And I continued to be, when I would go over recently, we would have the door open and be listening for traffic coming by so we'd know, whether there was risk. A couple people and I have had some conversations wondering how many of the neighbors might have been out to get him. It turns out 2 years ago that the nephew of a neighbor was staying with the neighbor. I have no idea which house it was. I never learned that. But this nephew was apparently with, I think, MS-13, and there was a price on Larry's head that this guy wanted to get for himself. And so he was there keeping an eye on Larry and, was one of the ones that had a vested interest in seeing him gone. So be careful this weekend. Be very aware. We need to we're at a point now, folks, we need to be aware of our surroundings and be cautious. So this really isn't just a vote for person and personality. We know there are things that we don't like about President Trump. There are things, Larry could have a pretty crass mouth sometimes. And, I found it offensive, but I so appreciated everything else he did. You will see that there's only one instance of using bad language in the in 28 years to nowhere. I cleaned it up except for one place where I put it in quotes, because I didn't want to be offending a lot of people. Extra conservative, ultra conservative Christians, we take offense at so many little things and forget what's more important. We tend not to forgive an adult for the fact that they come to Christ later in life and have established habits that are very hard to get rid of. I had a discussion on my trip in Texas this weekend with somebody who is really trying to clean up language that's habitual, and be more careful about speech edifying the Lord, glorifying the Lord, and being careful about that. So we need to get off. If you needed to go to the doctor, would you rather go to somebody who was clean cut, never said a crossword, never used the Lord's name in vain, never cursed, but really didn't have the skills to be able to treat you, to do surgery, for example, was not trained as a surgeon? Or would you rather go to a brash, brusque doctor who is the best in the area or the best in the country? I think I'd rather go to somebody who doesn't have a very clean mouth and has made some terrible mistakes in their past, but knows their stuff. And what we have in President Trump is a businessman who knows how to negotiate, who has worked with the elite all over the world, and is making a huge difference, and is a baby Christian, a new Christian, but has Christians in his cabinet more than anybody else ever has, and has Christians surrounding him with advice. Now, we know some of the Christians he has around him, and we have varying opinions about these people. But, he's trying to live for the Lord. And believe me, I don't remember ever. I've heard presidents talk about God before, but I have never heard a president before mention the name of Jesus Christ and how important he is to our country and our success as a country. God can become a nebulous term because God can be used for any religious belief system, but Jesus Christ sets apart faith in it, and that provides the eternal salvation. Jesus said, "I'm the way, the truth, and the life. No one comes to the Father. No one comes to God the Father except through Jesus Christ." And the fact that Trump will acknowledge that, man, yes, there are things that we disagree with. There are always going to be things policies he's going to make, things he's going to do that some of us would disagree with because it's wrong and he's made a mistake, or we disagree because we don't understand what's going on behind the scenes that we're missing out on. I noticed that in working with Larry for the last 4 years. There were times when I was really upset about something was happening until Larry said, "No, this is why it's being done, and this is why it has to be done this way." And I had to throw up my hands and go, wow, I'm ignorant. Understandably ignorant, but, ignorant means don't understand. You're lacking knowledge. So, yeah, that happens. So it's really important that we vote the issues. Because, as I mentioned yesterday, one party is promoting religious freedom. The other one wants to eliminate all religion and only be atheistic or Satanist. Parental rights for where you send your child to school, parental rights with regard to vaccines. I've seen something that said that, the vaccines were going to be ready, but Trump was saying, privately, well, look at the date when we're going to start. And, it's after the elections, and end of October is still early elections. So it's after the elections are going. And it could be that and he is saying in the beginning that it's not going to be forced, and how much he really knows about all that's happening. He should. So he has to go along to get along until he can take them down. So there are things that he can do in his second term that he cannot do yet. And so we have got to be patient with him. We've got to be patient with Barr. I know there's a group that's going to protest at Barr's home today, or wherever they're going to protest Barr, and they're going to go protest against Biden at his home. And you know, they don't mean any harm other than just to vocalize and use their free speech rights. But, you know, I get kind of frustrated with some of these people when I explain over and over and over again what Larry's explained to us, that Barr can, Trump can fire all the federal prosecutors in his second term, and these liberal federal prosecutors in DC and New York are what's blocking being able to go forward with any of these prosecutions. Because if they prosecute somebody, because all those lawsuits against these evil deep state folks, they're all intertwined. And if one of them gets thrown out because they have a liberal judge and a liberal jury, that's going to affect all the other cases like dominoes. So we have to be patient and let him do what he can do in his second term. You know, we're talking about biblical morality versus a very radical agenda, and the whole issue of life versus death. Goodness, Deuteronomy 30:19, I set before you life and death, blessing and cursing, therefore choose life that you may live. So when you go to vote, make sure you choose life. And I don't remember if I mentioned this yesterday. In Arkansas, they are trying to, the Satanists are trying to say that abortion and probably other murders are rituals. They're religious rituals, and therefore it should be protected under religious freedom. No, in the first term, Patricia, a president can fire prosecutors, but not judges. In his second term, federal judges are appointed for life, but a president can fire them all in his second term. They will keep their lifetime salary. We can't take that away from them, but they can be replaced. And so that's what we're expecting. And then as I was reading Ezekiel 33 yesterday, it was talking about, you know, if you don't vote, this is my application. If you don't vote, or you're silent in telling people what you know, it's on your head. You know, you don't vote, then you, like Larry has said, if you don't vote for Trump, then if you don't vote at all, your vote, in effect, it goes to Biden, because you did not do anything to stop Biden. And we discussed yesterday that so many people last weekend were Googling, how do I change my vote? So I heard from somebody last night that said there are 26 states where you can change a paper ballot or an absentee ballot. You cannot change anything that's gone through the machine. But Patricia, no, it's 2 terms only. Now there was, I think if somebody comes in as a vice president and the president dies, and so they're taking over that president's term, then they can go for 2 terms after that. So I think you can go 2.5 terms under those circumstances. But no, President Trump cannot go unless there's some major change because of what they did to him. I do not expect he can go again. Now, Kat Kerr, who claims to have the gift of prophecy, is saying that Trump is going to help train Pence and that he will be in for 2 years, and then his vice president will be in for not 2 years, 2 terms. But, you know, we'll find out, you know, pretty soon, you know, next week, for example. Kat Kerr is saying that there will not be the riots after the election that we are expecting. So we'll see. And I agree, JR. Murder obviously should never be a religious ritual or a religious rite. That is all part of the Baal or Moloch false god worship that was done by Israel, and that murder and sacrifice, human sacrifice, was why God destroyed Israel. So our country's in grave trouble if that grows in our country. Now, I mean, the fact that we've had 62 million babies murdered through abortion, I mean, we're on borrowed time with the Lord. And he really is, I think, watching. He wants our country to be what it was set up to be in the beginning. I do believe that. But he's watching to see what people are going to do. But the big difference is the remnant. And it was interesting. I was listening to somebody talking about Sodom and Gomorrah last night. And Sodom and Gomorrah, you know, God had promised if he could find 10 righteous, he would not destroy the city. The person who was speaking was saying that if those 10 people had been praying for their city, he would have spared the city. But Lot alone was not, didn't seem to be interceding for where the people around him. So, you know, it's interesting to think about communism being so intertwined with Satanism. Karl Marx was a Jew, but he became a Satanist. And, you know, the social workers think Marx is just such hot stuff. You know, people are so deceived by the concept of socialism, thinking that it is just and equal. No. You've got to be careful about equal versus equitable. What happens under communism and socialism is you have a ruling elite, a very small minority that gets anything and everything they want. They're free from ever getting into trouble. They can have whatever food they want. They make sure that they're taken care of first. Everybody else goes down to the lowest common denominator. So can you imagine $30 million a year sports figures who end up being whacked and having to eke out a living like the poorest among us? You know, that's not going to go over very well, but that's what communism does. If you're not part of the political ruling elite, you're nobody. And they will take you out no matter who you are and how much money you have. Now, there are people who have, you know, multi-billionaires who can buy their way in to the elite, and they have. But, you know, if you're not a billionaire, nope. Richard Wurmbrandt, Wurmbrandt, Richard Wurmbrandt. He was the one that started Voice of the Martyrs. He was a pastor in Romania when communism took over the country. And he wrote a book called Marx and Satan that I would highly recommend. I haven't read it. I was thinking about trying to find it. It's interesting to see what's happened in China, especially in recent years. You know, politically, they're communist, but in recent years, their economic system has been capitalist. And yet they have, you know, through Biden and others, I mean, just look at the list of people in Congress that live in $1 million mansions on their $174,000 salary a year. I think that's the starting salary. So most of them are probably, you know, over 200,000 because of the number of years they've been there, which was never supposed to happen. But, you know, so many of them have made deals with China and have sold so much of America's land and farms. You know, I do get concerned about some of the deals Trump made even with China with the promises of food. And do they get first dibs off what the farmers have to sell, and the food will go to them before it will stay here for us if there isn't enough? I don't know. I heard somebody yesterday make the claim that Susan Collins is bought by the Chinese. I don't know if that's true, but I do know we saw Oh, sorry, Josephine. I don't know what's wrong sound-wise because I have sound going on here to the best of my knowledge. So, Dianne Feinstein, they discovered her chauffeur was a Chinese spy. So she's been doing deals with China for a long time. And, I remember when Mike, I have not sent them out because I was traveling. So send me a text message. I will give you my phone number right here. Send me a text or call me after the show. I'm going to be getting them all ready to go this weekend. So call me. Susan Collins, Dianne Feinstein. I remember when they were going to vote in the Senate for Kavanaugh, I remember seeing Dianne Feinstein blocking Susan Collins. Dianne had her hand against the wall, and she was really very stern-faced, scolding Susan Collins to force her to vote with the Democrats. And of course, she did not vote to approve of Amy Coney Barrett. She voted with the Democrats too. Another question: when they're bought by China, they have an obligation then to do things that would serve China's interests more than our own. So, they have the communists. You're right, Humphreys. They have infiltrated both parties. And the longer people are in office, the more likely they are to have been bought out. Like Larry used to always say, we have the best government money can buy. It's just that we, the people, don't have the money to buy it. Have you noticed the three red stripes creating the letter E in the name Biden? Those three stripes are the three flags of China, of communism. That was something that came in with the red shirts before communism took over. It was a symbol from Mao of those three red flags. So be paying attention. Was it Lisa Murkowski that Dianne Feinstein was threatening? I think you're right. You're right. It was Lisa Murkowski. But she did this time vote with the Republicans for Amy Coney Barrett. But remember, if she's up for election, she's trying to keep her seat. So when she found out that the vote was going to go approval anyway, then this is how it works, folks. If your vote doesn't make any difference to the outcome, then you are allowed to vote to keep your job and fool the people at home. So the other issue with communism, when I see so much how our country is following what happened in Germany before Hitler came to power. A charismatic leader and all the things that were being set up economically and politically before he took over. It just seems like we're following so close, including immorality issues. Let me answer this. I will call you back. I'm on the air right now. I'll call you as soon as I'm done. Okay. I'm looking at my list of information. Oh, the other thing I was hearing was that thinking about the court system, and when Marshall was head of the Supreme Court, they started a thing called judicial review. And that is where a lot of the increased power to the court system started, because they were saying that before something was passed into law, they needed to be allowed to review whether it really was constitutional. No, that is not the way it was supposed to work. Laws were passed by the legislature, and if somebody didn't like it, then they could put forward a lawsuit against the law to then be reviewed by judges all the way to the Supreme Court. So it is, we have a judicial system and a legislative system, and they're supposed to be kept separate. And the legislative system is not supposed to get involved unless there's a lawsuit they're looking at. And we will find that there will be times where we don't like the way the conservative justices on the Supreme Court vote, but they have to look very carefully at the case as it is presented, and they have to rule not on the concept but on the case itself. So if a case is presented in a certain way, they may rule in ways that will not be pro-life, but they have to do it based on the case in front of them. And so we have to be prepared for that, even with Amy Coney Barrett and her pro-life stance. If a case comes before her that is worded in a certain way and she has to rule on it, we may not like the way it goes. So that's all I'm going to do today. And I'm going to go vote now. And we'll be back with more of God's Word on Monday. I've heard some things about Hunter Biden and the Bidens and things that are going on, but I don't know how to vet them for accuracy without having Larry here to ask questions, because I don't have access like he did. And so we're all dependent on other people that we need to trust. So, we're all going to just have to keep our eyes and ears open for what's going on. I think Steve Quayle has known an awful lot of information over the years. Larry used to work with him, do broadcasts with him some time ago. And it seemed like, Larry thought that he had some good information back then. So, I really don't know. I think the only time Steve Quayle is heard on air anymore is with Doug Hagman on Thursday nights. So if anybody wants to pray over the weekend about the elections, send me a text message and I'll set up a time and we'll get on a conference call together and have prayer. Anyhow, that's it for now. We'll talk again on Monday. Do anything you can to prepare to make sure you've got food for next week, just in case things get a little rough on Tuesday. Make sure you can take care of yourself for the next week or so for sure. And be in prayer that the Lord is just going to block the plots and plans of the evil one. And remember, no weapon formed against you can prosper. And pray over yourself and your family and your home, Psalm 91. Okay? All right. Thanks, guys. We'll talk on Monday. God bless you. Bye.